What's up, gamers? I originally recorded this earlier today, but my power flickered, and so I had to start over. Also, I just had eggnog, so my voice is going to be a little bit full of cream, so we'll see how this goes. I'm Josh Yoshi Howard, and today we're doing the meta update. What happened over this past weekend in the guard meta? Let's go ahead and get into it, because it is a fun one. To start off with, we had about 40% of events were running the old rules, like old points, no grizzled, and about 60% of events were running like grizzled or new points in some combination. I've decided to split them up a little bit, but most of the stuff that we're going to be seeing today, actually, I believe all of it is going to be the new stuff. So to start off with, if you were looking at stuff that was only played using September rules, we went 28 wins, 47 losses, and 1 draw for an overall win rate of 37.5%, which is pretty bad. That is one of our worst weekends, but it's also a pretty small sample size, so it doesn't tell us a whole lot. On the other hand, for all of the events that were running the new stuff, we had 64 wins, 62 losses, 5 draws for an overall win rate of 50.8%. You will also note that the average ELO, this is the highest average ELO by a significant margin for any week that I have covered so far, but it is worth noting that this is dragged up by 2 players who are not typically guard players, who are both over 1800 and went 0 and 2 and 3 and 2, so they were not having the instant success that some people sometimes think. Guard, despite being a very strong fundamentals army, is still an army that requires you to know how to play guard overall. Turns out it's weird. Still, though, over 50% is pretty good. It is also a fairly small sample size, so I wouldn't take too much into account. Other fun thing that I forgot to put in the notes, and I did not update the notes, and you can fight me over it. Grizzled was like about two thirds of people who were playing with access to the new stuff did end up playing Grizzled Company. That's what it's called. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into lists. I have 6 of them to show you. Every single one of them was from events playing the new stuff. So to start off with, one other thing I want to talk about before we get to the new stuff and actually looking at the lists, it is worth noting, and this is really important to understand, part of the reason why the guard win rate is going up, at least with the new stuff, there are 2 things to think about. One, we got a pretty good new detachment. That is definitely going to be something to think about. However, the overall power of the game went down pretty considerably. Basically, all of the top armies were nerfed fairly heavily. So Eldar took some pretty big nerfs. Admech took some pretty big nerfs. Emperor's Children took some nerfs because of reasons. Chaos Knights took some nerfs. Ultramarines took, like, not super heavy nerfs, but they did take some nerfs as well. They will probably take another set of nerfs in whenever we get our next data slate. But like all of the really big scary armies, Sisters took like 100 points of nerfs. All of the really big like S tier armies were knocked down quite a bit. So the fact that we did not go down, the fact that we are still at the same power level while everything else that was like really good went down at the same time, should naturally come with our win rate increasing, with even if we didn't even get Grizzled Company. So just kind of keep that in mind over the next couple of weeks, that yes, our win rate is going to be high, but it's not because we are necessarily better or Grizzled is OP necessarily. It is partly just that our bad matchups are better now because the bad matchups took a lot of nerfs. Anyway, list number 1. This one at the Grim GT, I don't know if it was Grizzled Company. I'm pretty sure it was Grizzled Company. There were a couple other events, or a couple other players at the event playing Grizzled Company, but Jawad, you didn't submit your detachment. So I'm pretty sure this is Grizzled Company, but he did play Hammer last time he showed up, so it's possible that this is combined or Hammer, or it could be Grizzled. I don't know exactly, and the fact that there are no enhancements anywhere means that I can't know for sure. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about it. Jawad Salah getting 2nd place overall at Grim GT. I believe this one was in Australia, going 4-1. He had a Cadian command squad, Gaunt's Ghost, Lord Solar, 2 Rogaldorn commanders, 2 units of 10 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 2 units of 10 Rough Riders, 1 unit of 5 Rough Riders, 1 Leman Battle Tank, 1 Leman Exterminator, and 2 Leman Vanquishers. So a couple interesting things going on here. Of course, assuming that it is Grizzled Company, there are a total of 10 available squadron orders for only 6 vehicles. So it is a very heavy vehicle list overall. I know a lot of people who are experimenting with Grizzled Company are still in favor of Ursula Creed over Lord Solar, because while Lord Solar gives you 5 guaranteed CP as long as he's alive the entire battle, which he typically is, Lord Solar will give you 5. Ursula Creed, if you're using the free strat every battle round in a meaningful way, you're getting 5 CP off of Creed that way, and then realistically you're getting another 2 or 3 most of the time off of Voxcaster. So realistically, Lord Solar gives you 5 for sure. Creed is going to give you 7 or 8 effective extra command points. And the Rogothorn Commander is still pretty good. I am a little bit surprised that it's 2 Rogothorn Commanders instead of just 1 Rogothorn Commander if this was Grizzled, simply because the normal Rogothorn battle tank, the stocks go way up in Grizzled Company as compared to the other ones. Other than that, it's a lot of tanks, it's a lot of violence overall. The 25 Rough Riders is an interesting number, but it is a lot of rapid ingress threat. It kind of does similar jobs, kind of, to the way that Kazarkin are often played, where you play them in a transport, you get them out of a transport, you go kill something. But this is kind of like a discount version of that. It doesn't have the same kind of ability to like pop a transport, let something else kill it, but you can pop a transport with your tanks, and then the Rough Riders can charge something inside a transport potentially as well. It is an interesting list overall. Like I said, very violent, very focused on just killing the opponent. This ended up beating Tyranids, Assimilation Swarm, CSM Veterans of the Long War, Death Guard, Virulent Victorum. It lost to Custodes, Talons of the Emperor. I can kind of see that making sense with the reactive move, and sometimes like guard, it's favored it is favored into Custodes, but sometimes you just lose because they hit a lot of 4-up invuls and a lot of 4-up Feel Pains. You roll low on your shot count, and they live, and you go, oh, okay, my bad. So not sure exactly what the story is on what happened with that one. It's generally a good matchup, but sometimes you do just lose. And then it did beat Death Guard Virulent Victorium again in the last round. Overall, congratulations to Jawad, showing up in the videos a second time, getting second place here at Grim GT. Next, we have the Winter Waaagh, coming out from Ross Small. I believe this one was in the UK, I think. I believe between these two guys, I believe they are UK players, but funny story at the end of this one that we'll get to. Ross Small going 4-0, 4 wins, no losses, and 1 draw, getting second place at De Winter Waaagh, with a Cadian Command Squad, Gaunt's Ghost, an Ogrim Bodyguard, 2 Rogothorn Commanders, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 2 Chimeras, 1 unit of 10 Rough Riders, 3 units of Kazarkin, and 3 Lemanar's Vanquishers. So a couple of choices being made here, giving some give and take. Still has the 3 Kazarkin, which pretty much everybody I know who's been playing Crystal Company says that, yeah, it's really, really good. If you're trying to play any army that vaguely resembles combined arms, you probably want to take the 3 Kazarkin still. The 2 Dorns and the 3 Vanquishers, tried and true, that has been like a staple of the Guard competitive for most of the last year. But the really interesting thing to me is the fact that there's a Cadian Command Squad with the 20 Cadians and an Ogrim Bodyguard, but typically I don't see the 20 Cadians brought very often if you don't have Ursa Creed or Cadian Castellan attached to it. One of the first things that I would be looking at with this is Gaunt's Ghost have felt a little bit superfluous. I haven't really felt like I've needed the order switching between the snap to it and, with the snap to it and free strats. So it is a bit of an interesting thought process there. I also do wonder if like the 10 Cadians could have been a Taurox or something. If you drop Gaunt's Ghost and add Ursa Creed in, you get yourself up to 80 points, which could be a Taurox. But either way, no real complaints about this. The Ogrim Bodyguard, an interesting shout here as well. You could split that off from the 20 Cadians and just have the CS OPG running around, but you got plenty of firepower, you got plenty of midboard. This is still very much just a tried and true style of guard that we've been seeing for quite a while. And fun thing, it beat Raven Guard, Shadowmark, Custodes, Lions of the Emperor, Ultramarines, Blade of Ultramar. This is the new, technically not Gladius. Drukhari Spectacle of Spite, and then it actually got a draw in round 5 into another Guard Grizzled Company player, which I'm going to show you right now, because it is Caius Swindlehurst at the same event, getting 3rd place overall, losing out on tiebreakers to Ross Small that we just took a look at. This is also another interesting list. It's a Cadian Command Squad, Tempestus Command Squad with Aquilin Eye for the extra AP, a Tempestus Command Squad with the Laud Hailer for the extra range on orders. That, I'm not going to lie, that looks like a point filler to me. I'm not really sure why it would be in a list, like basically any list otherwise, but it is an interesting thing. So I'd be curious if Caius had ways that he was using it more actively instead of just having the instead of it just being there. Like, it feels like 10 extra points. I probably would have spent the extra points or the 10 points on upgrading a Torox to a Chimera, but that's just me. The equivalent eye with a Tempestuous Command Squad, this is something I've been thinking about for a while. You do, of course, because you can give 2 orders and you take command rods in Grizzle Company basically all the time. You drop the 2 units of science next to each other, you give them both +1 AP with the equivalent eye, and then you give them both First Ring Fire, Second Ring Fire, so you do a lot of damage. Continuing on, we have 2 Robothorn Commanders, Ursa Creed, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 1 Chimera, 2 Toroxes, 1 unit of 10 Rough Riders, 3 units of Kazarkin, 2 units of 5 Scions, and a Cyclops. Again, this looks very normal compared to a lot of things we've been seeing. We have been seeing more people experimenting with Scions once again in Grizzle Company because they're like pseudo Bridgehead. Because you can give them like the +1 to hit from the order when you drop down, which is like the Bridgehead thing, and then you could also give them, or they have the reroll 1s as well, so you're hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s with a lot of shots and sustain, and you can give them access to like ignores cover and stuff relatively easily. And then you can give them the Mordian Minute, which is probably not the best usage of your CP, but it's like a totally fine one if you want to hit those breakpoints for some weapons being +1 to wound. Anyway, overall, pretty normal stuff. I've played lists, or I've tested lists very similar to this one, so looks good. Ended up getting a draw in the last round. There was something a little funky in the first round where they won like 40-0, so I put that in as a buy overall because I don't think something funky happened in that game. Anyway, they also beat Drukhari Spectral Spite, Green Tide Orcs, another Ultramarines Blade of Ultramar, I believe was actually the same player that Ross Small played, and then getting the draw in round 5 going up against Ross Small, who we just took a look at. So both of them going 4 wins, no losses, and 1 draw, and because they both had a draw, they both knocked themselves out of ability to win because the winner of the event did go 5-0, but getting 2nd and 3rd at the same event, very cool. All right, next we have our first GT win with Grizzle Company coming out from David Smith of Table to Talk. They do have a podcast. That's what it's called. There is a podcast called Table to Talk. If you Google it, you will find it. I don't believe I found it on YouTube, but Spotify, yada yada, all that good stuff. You can go find it as well. I'm sure they're going to be talking about it next week or sometime. I did put out a feeler through one of the people who might know David, but David, if you are watching this and are interested in doing an interview, as is your right, being the first person to win a GT with Grizzle Company, you can, of course, come on to do an interview with us if that is something you're interested in. Okay, next. Going into the list itself, a Cadian Command Squad, a Commissar with the Abhuman detail, so you can attach it to a Bulgrin unit, and you can give orders to anything with the Ogren keyword. Gaunt's Ghost, Lord Solar, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 2 Chimeras, 2 units of 10 Rough Riders, 1 unit of 6 Bulgrin, 1 unit of Cadian Mortars. I was very surprised to see Cadian Mortars instead of Catachan Mortars, because I think Catachan Mortars are just better in every way at the same points cost. 2 units of Kazarkim, 2 Lemur's Vanquishers, and 1 Rogaldorn Battle Tank. So no Rogaldorn Commanders in this one coming out from David, but it is still going to be a fair number of holes, the 2 Lemur's Vanquishers and the 1 Rogaldorn, all getting orders, and they aren't really tethered to anything because of the long-range orders from Lord Solar being attached to the Cadian Command Squad and 10 Cadians. Kind of sits around at home. It is a very normal thing that we used to do basically all the time. Lord Solar, 10 Cadians, and a Cadian Command Squad just kind of hung out for like 2-3 turns before, like on turn 3, 4, 5, depending on when your opponent runs out of things that can threaten your home objective. They would run out, and Lord Solar, I mean, he's got like 6 attacks on 2s at like 6-2-2. It's not nothing, so you just go out and punch things later on in the game. The Commissar with Abhuman detail being attached to the 6 Bulgrin here, one of the things that we have been seeing from other players is if you do this, you do open yourself up to some risky epic challenges, and Bulgrin being OC1 and then going back to hitting on 3s without an ability to hit on 2s, reroll 1s, does mean that they're like, you know, they're not as interesting as they used to be, but they're not bad. And then if your opponent spends 1 CP to kill the Commissar, like, it's not the worst thing in the world, because then they're probably not killing very many Bulgrin, but if they can do it with like a cheap character and get like 2 attacks through with or 3 attacks through with a power sword, because the Commissar also has the -1 damage, ends up being not bad. 2 units of 10 Rough Riders also running around. The Cadian Mortars, I'm assuming, are just standing on the home field. I believe there was a game of David's being played on War Games Live, but I believe Lord Solar and friends moved out relatively early in the game because the Cadian Mortars were holding down the home. Otherwise, pretty normal kind of stuff. Big thing here is, of course, only one Dorn and the two Vanquishers is a little bit low on the firepower, but you do have a lot of damage and a lot of staying power coming out from the Bulgrin and then the two units of 10 Rough Riders. David ended up beating CSM Pact Bound Sisters Champions of Faith, a guard mech assault, Robert Moreland, one of the first interviews we did on this channel, GSC Final Day, Drukhari Cablite Cartel, and winning in the finals against Dark Angels Wrath of the Rock. So a lot of fairly low toughness things, a lot of stuff that doesn't have a ton of like long range shooting that you necessarily need to worry about. So the 10 Rough Riders able to run a little bit better than they would on some other matchups. But nonetheless, congratulations to David Smith getting first place at Rise of the Empire. Second, we have another player coming from Rise of the Empire. This is 2 times that we have had 2 people in the same event in this 1 week alone. Thomas Greer coming out with a 4-1 at Rise of the Empire with a Kading Command Squad, Commissar with Abhuman Detail, Gaunt's Ghost, 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, 2 Toroxes, 1 unit of 10 Rough Riders, 6 Bulgrin, 3 units of Kazarkin, a Basilisk, 1 Hellhound, and 1 Lemur's Vanquisher. Now, I'm not going to lie, this style of list is not really my style that I like to play. It's really low activation count, but all of the activations are pretty high quality, right? You have the 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, the 3 Kazarkin, the 6 Bulgrin, a Hellhound, and a Lemur's Vanquisher, giving you a lot of like midboard toughness and durability that your opponent does have to chew through. And then you still have enough damage in this overall, but this definitely feels like a pretty big stat check for people to try and push their way through, and because it is very durable, you got a lot of toughness 10 or higher 2+ save bodies, as well as Kazarkin that can kind of get anywhere, Bulgrin that your opponent will have to deal with at some point if they ever want to try to take your natural away. It ends up being a stat check that not a lot of armies can easily pass because we have so much range shooting and we actually have these melee threats. Thomas ended up beating Dark Angels Ironstorm, Dark Angels Gladius, losing to Thousand Suns Rubrique Phalanx, beating White Scar's Spearpoint and Death Guard Virulent Victorum. Once again, showcasing we are pretty darn good into Marine matchups in general. Okay, our last one is probably the most interesting one that I have seen, and a very unique take in general. So this is coming out from Brian Moody, has shown up several times on this channel. I believe he was the guy playing Bridgehead, one of the guys playing Bridgehead for a long time. I did invite him to the Discord recently, so if that's something you're interested in, you know what to do. Ursa Creed, Kading Command Squad with a Quillen Eye, 3 Catachan Command Squads, 1 Commissar with Abhuman Detail, a Ministorum Priest, Cyclops, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 3 units of 20 Catachan, 1 unit of 6 Bulgrin, 3 units of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of 5 Ratlings, 3 units of 10 Rough Riders, 2 units of 10 Death Riders, and 1 unit of 5 Death Riders. He recently put a post out on Reddit about this being melee guard, and I mean, it is a lot of melee. You have the 30 Rough Riders, the 25 Death Riders, which is very similar to things we've seen Marshall Peterson play in the past, and the Catachan giving the unit assault. And one of the things he did mention was the Aquilin Eye actually making the Catachan Flamers AP1, and you have 4 Flamers in the 20 Catachan, and then the Heavy Flamer and the Normal Flamer in the Catachan Command Squad ends up giving you 5d6 of 4-1-1 Flamers and 1d6 of 5-2-1 Flamer. So, like, it's actually a lot of Overwatch work that you can get done with that. The Rough Riders ends up being really good counterpunch. The Death Riders, again, really good at going to kill like small skirmishing pieces, even though they're a little bit slower. And then the 6th Bulgrin, he said, with the Commissar, actually stood on his natural basically the entire tournament, and there were just too many other things on the board for his opponent to come deal with the Bulgrin. There is a part of me that wonders if something else could have stood on that objective and he used the Bulgrin to push a bit more aggressively, but nonetheless, he does get a 4-1 event overall. Beating Orcs Bully Boys, losing to Demonic Incursion, 90 points to 100, so a very high-scoring game there. Beating Kaoyan Tao, beating Starsharder Arsenal Necrons, and Blood Angels Liberator Assault Group. It does make sense to me that Necrons and Blood Angels would have a lot of trouble with this. They simply do not have the volume. I didn't look super closely at either the Bully Boy Orcs or the Kaoyan Tao, but they oftentimes don't have the volume necessary to punch through like 20 Catachan, 55 horses, and all the other stuff. I am very curious about the demonic incursion because those armies tend not to have enough OC, nor do they have enough attacks to kill this many bodies. So I'm very curious at what actually happened in that one. I wonder if it was like a purge the foe, but 100 to 90 is like a very high score for a double purge the foe, or I guess just purge the foe in general. Either way, still a 4-1 coming out from Brian Moody. He said it was his last event of the year, so we'll see more of him in 2026, I'm sure. Anyway, this has been all 6 lists of the first weekend that we have of Grizzle Company. We had no list of anything that was Grizzle Company or anything that was not Grizzle Company. No Combined, no Hammer, no Bridgehead, no nothing coming out this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. We do have a couple more weeks of this, but I expect it to be relatively slow for the rest of the year. We do have a officer training school about the Caden Castle and Brick coming out relatively soon, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys all next time. Bye-bye.